We're getting started. So my big, worry. We have technical difficulties. Well, that was all for naught. We're only 2 minutes late. That's not too terribly bad.
No.
Oh, there we are and everything. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everybody. And look, we have 3 of us on here today. Yay! Good morning to all of our friends out there. And hopefully we're going to give you some interesting news. And we have a busy morning because all of you better have registered for Lori's interview. I guess that's what we would call that, Lori's interview with Dan Smith. And we have that plastered all over Facebook land. So the link is out there. If you haven't registered, please do. And on that note, hey, Lori, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Good morning. Noah, thanks for being here today.
Happy to be here.
It's always a joy to see you. It's not often enough. So welcome to our crazy little Monday morning show. So yeah, we do have the Orange County Realtors interview at 10. So I'll be jumping off a little early and hopefully these two won't talk too much and can end early so you all can jump over to the other session at 10 as well. So just a couple quick updates. So Friday's CAR town hall meeting, they did let us know we had all already heard about the federal and the California extension of the rental moratorium. We've got 2 competing pieces of legislation. We've got the federal, and then we've got the state, and there's a bunch of different dates. So if you're not a property manager, please don't worry about it. Please don't give advice to your clients. If you are a property manager, talk with a local attorney to make sure that you can refer your clients to someone, because it's not good. It's really sad how these extensions are going to put landlords further behind. There is some federal aid, but it's not great either. So knock on wood, people are not subjected to having their tenants having stopped paid, but if you are, you need to get some legal help because it's not good. It's going to last a long time. So that's one thing. I want to talk a little bit about the zip forms and glide transition. So we all have had zip forms for many years as a CAR member benefit. They sold off the product, Lone Wolf owns it, and in the meantime, Glide is a new partner with CAR for a little over a year, I believe, and Glide has created and partnered with CAR to offer all of our forms. So as agents, we have 2 choices now. The Glide went live just a couple weeks ago, 1 or 2 weeks ago. If you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to do so. You have free access to both, but the 2 systems don't communicate with each other. So it's not like you can start a document in Glide and then work on it in zip forms. They're 2 separate systems. But one thing I wanted to point out is that if you utilize the letter library, which is in zip forms, that is not currently in Glide. It might become part of Glide, but it'll be a little while. So if you use those letters, just know you need to get them in zip form still. And they talked about one letter that I had heard a broker that's well known in Southern California mention before, but I thought it was her personal company, her company's document. But there's actually a letter in the CAR letter library that's called acting against the advice of the broker. So acting against the advice of the broker. There's one for the seller and one for the buyer. So when we find ourselves in situations where we've given advice to our client, whichever side it is, and they want to go a different way and they're acting against our advice, there is a letter that you can provide to them, and you can find it in the zip forms letter library. So I downloaded them to take a look, and they're really good. They're for the protection of the brokerage. And so it was requested during that session to make that an actual form instead of a letter. That way with a form, then you can include the signature lines, and it just feels more official for us. Plus, it's going to be easier to find if it's a form. So I wanted to point that out. So if you're a broker, take a look at it. I can't recall a situation since we've had our brokerage where we've needed to utilize anything like that. Certainly at my former brokerage, we did, because we did so many transactions, but it's a good piece. So I encourage you to take a look at it in the letter library. And we should be hearing some information about the NAR and Department of Justice final rulings. They established the final rulings on January 20th, but CAR doesn't have any details yet in terms of implementation, because the NAR Board of Directors does need to approve this. So they weren't clear on timing. We don't have an NAR meeting until May. So it wasn't clear whether we are going to wait until May to vote on that as directors, or whether we would have some special meeting or special email vote. So stay tuned for that. So the good news is there's nothing new on that front right now, and we don't have any details yet. And let's see. There was discussion on a couple of new brokerages out there. We won't really talk about them too much and give them airtime, but there are some new brokerages out there, and they're using their own forms. They're not using or accepting CAR forms. So this is why that acting against the advice of the broker letter came up, because as members of CAR, we use the CAR forms. And so we have authority to use those forms, and we have the expectation of understanding those forms. We don't have the ability to interpret anyone else's forms because we don't have information on them. We can read them. We're not attorneys. So if you are in a transaction where you are receiving documentation that's not on a CAR form, talk to your broker about what to do about that form. And you can still provide the CAR forms. You don't have to rely on the other forms. Now, that doesn't mean the other side will play well, but you can still provide to your client, here's what you should have received. So you have at least have provided them the documentation. Whether you can get the other side to sign on it or fill it out, is yet to be seen, but you certainly can ask. So just be aware that if you're doing business with some new brokerages, and they're large, they're not single people brokerages.
Are they brokerages that we would all know the name of?
You do now, just very recently.
Oh, somebody that maybe changed the business model?
No, well, change their own. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So that one came up, and it sounded like there may be another one out there that's doing something similar, but nobody named names. So just be aware of that.
We have a question from Pam saying, are these brokerages CAR members?
That I don't know. That didn't come up, so I don't know. But it's a good question.
Yeah. And if they're in the MLS, wouldn't they have to say, we're using all of our own forms, do not submit an offer on something?
I don't know if they have to disclose that. And being a CAR member, they don't have to use the CAR forms, because there are brokerages out there who have personally branded their own forms. There are a couple of companies. I remember years ago, one of the NHD companies, one of their selling points was, hey, you can get books that are the disclosures branded for you. And now, the books aren't out there, but I have seen, in helping some of my broker clients put their systems in place for their checklists and auditing their files to give them input on how they can improve their files. I've seen branded forms, so it's still being done. They're no longer CAR forms when they're branded for the broker, and they have to have a special agreement. They may have an agreement in place. I'm not 100% clear on whether they are still protected by CAR, but I'm not sure that they are, because now they're modified. And so if you modify them, how will CAR protect them? But I'm not totally clear on that.
Well, and that brings up an interesting topic when you say you're not protected by CAR. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so when you use the CAR forms, they have a certain level of warranty that the information is that they've pre-printed, not anything we fill in, but anything that they've listed in the pre-printed text on the form is compliant with the laws, is the language that should be used, and is in reality for the protection of the client, but also for the protection of the brokerage. So they have a certain level of warranty that they say when you use our forms, then you, agent, can feel confident that what you're putting out there is appropriate. And so if you're using other forms, we can't interpret them and they can't warranty them because they don't know what they are and they are not part of the preparation of them. It's like, you know, for title reports, you know, not all title reports are created equal, and one company is not going to warranty a title report that someone else produced. So similar.
Interesting information. Well, and we have a couple of statements or questions here. One, I guess it could be the battle of the OCR presidents. Danielle asks, my personal opinion is that their name should be given. We are not talking badly about them. We're just giving our members information so they know to be prepared with this new form. Maybe we can find a piece in a trade publication and post it, and then that way we're really not saying anything. But
about their using forms.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we'd find a trade publication on that.
Well, I'll look and see if I can find anything. But I guess we could probably say to Danielle, use your imagination.
And you were on the call, so you know who I'm talking about. and that's probably her point. Is
are they a zesty kind of company?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
like
sorry, Noah.
I just don't like to talk about other companies, you know, to that extent. So yeah, but just be mindful that one or more companies may have their own forms, and there's nothing wrong with that. It makes our job a little more challenging. They're allowed to use any forms they want, so they're doing nothing wrong, but you know, we have to be mindful. And part of the issue was that they were using forms for properties they purchased directly from sellers. So now that company is the brokerage. So now they're the owner, so they can do whatever they want too. But then there's a question of, well, now they're claiming they don't know anything about the properties. And we all know if you do know something, you have to disclose it. And it sounds like maybe they're going with a blanket statement of, we don't know. So kind of like what relocation companies used to do. I don't know if they're still doing that. I haven't dealt with any relocation companies in a couple of years, but you know, before it used to be like hands off, we don't know. So something to keep in mind. And then just a fun little story I want to share real quick. So most of you know, I've mentioned before, I teach for a couple of colleges. I teach pre-licensing classes. And so I had this student who's taking principal's class email me and ask this question. And I thought, what a great question. I'm going to tell everybody. She says, so, you know, I'm reading about the Business and Professions Code and misleading advertising. And I'm wondering, if a neighbor in my community has a for sale sign in their yard because they're an agent, and people are going up to the property asking about that house that's for sale, and the agent is saying, oh no, it's not for sale, but I can help you find others that are, is that a violation? And of course it is. Of course it is. So I was really excited that this student, you know, is reading in the principal's book, because if you all remember the principal's book, it's not easy reading. She read in the course and, you know, put 2 and 2 together that, wait, this might be false advertising, misleading advertising. And so, of course, I gave her well, here's what you should do about it. You should contact your local association or the Department of Real Estate or another real estate company and ask them to do it for you. So she only replied, thank you. I don't know that she'll do anything, and I don't know where she lives, but I thought, yeah, people do that apparently.
No, in fact, Pam Pettigo and I, we farm against each other in a couple of neighborhoods, but you know, I love Pam, and God, I hope she loves me too. Anyhow, though, in one of our joint farms, there was a coming soon sign, and this was before coming soons were kind of legal, for like 9 months in front of this house. And it wasn't the agent's house. That was the craziest thing, is it was just this
random.
big
Just-
sign up there.
Yeah.
It's like coming soon, like in this decade, coming soon. But oh, Pam loves me. We love you too, Pam. But that was something that we had a couple of interesting conversations. It's like, do you think that sign's ever going to go away? I mean, it was like I think it was permanently cemented into the yard. But
Well, it's like those furniture stores that are perpetually going out of business.
yeah, they're always going out of business.
Yeah.
Oh, Pam said he called the sign a lawn ornament.
Lawn.
Well, my student did ask me, or is this allowed because it falls under trade fixture? And I kind of scratched my head and I thought, I can't even put that one in that category at all. So I did say, well, if it was a property that zoned for mixed use where it's a business and a residence and it was a sign that said real estate services available, it would be okay. But that's not what was there. It was clearly a for sale sign. So no, that wasn't okay.
We're having a little bit of a nerdy love fest going on in the comments right now.
Well, I hope somebody at least says they love me.
We love Lori.
Lori, I love you.
Okay, everybody,
Thank
fill up
you.
the comments.
Yeah, you
Fill up the comments.
Thank you.
You got a lot of love coming your way, regardless. Okay.
Okay.
There's love all over this place.
Thank you. Every now and then
But
I need to
it's
look you up.
February. It's
hear you.
February. And you want to know something funny? The last time that I think you and I were out, because, we used to be out all the time. We never were out now. We haven't been out in ages. It was Galentine's Day.
That's right.
Oh, there it goes. It's filling up with Lori love right now. But it's, if all of you folks out there, you got Valentine's, but don't forget, you got Galentine's too on the 13th,
And the funny thing, I remember that night, the funny thing about that was I didn't really know. I had heard about Galentine's Day, but I thought it was on Valentine's Day. I didn't know it was the day before, I think. So we had planned to go to dinner and I didn't think it was like, a date.
Well, and then it was so funny because they had that swing out in the back there. We were at Brew in Lake Forest, if any of you know that. And back in the day when you could go out to dinner, they had like this little swing out in the back. And this couple of girls were out there and they're like, hey, can you take our picture of us in the swing? And it's like, yeah, sure. And then they're like, do you want us to take your picture in the swing? And we're like, of course we do. And that's one of my favorite pictures of me and my Galentine.
It's probably one of our last pictures together.
That was one of our last pictures.
Oh no, we did a picture recently.
Yes, we did. But that was not like having a fun night out where we were all dressed up. So
no, that was fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Valentine's Day is coming up. Cool.
Somehow, some way. It's unbelievable. Another year gone.
yeah.
Well, that's all I have. So.
Okay. And that's all you got. Noah. Hi, Noah.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Great to see everyone. Although I can only see Lori and Lisa, but it's
Well, you can catch this. We got 33 folks on here.
well. Hello to the other 33 folks.
And we tend to do pretty good. So you'll have to check later in the day and see how many people. I'll check and let you know how many people watched it later. But we just love our little Monday morning coffee and compliance crew. They're just wonderful folks. And
Awesome.
You know what?
Happy to be here.
You've got wonderful information to give those folks. And
Well,
in my screen, he's above me, so I keep pointing to.
Well, be sure to introduce him so everybody knows exactly
Okay.
who he is.
If you do not know Noah, Noah is, in my ever so humble opinion, one of the best, if not the best, title reps in all the land because, well, I have tested him numerous times. And
She has. Let me tell you, she has.
I know Noah likes to get up early because he answers text at ungodly hours. And he's easy to trick. We found that out. We needed to get him somewhere. And I'm like, Noah, I need a farm pack like now. Like in 2 hours, I need a farm pack. Get it to my office now. And guess what? He showed up in 2 hours with a full farm pack just so we could give him a gift. But it was fun. And you're getting a lot of love in the comments too there.
Thank you.
But Noah is going to tell us about what's going on in the world of fraud, because we all like to think that, oh, well, wire fraud is so 2017 or 2016 or whatever year it all came out to a boiling
Still
head,
happening.
but it's alive and well.
Yes, it
So,
is. And as Lori was just kind of saying, it's still happening. And they're getting honestly way more savvy and tricky, and they monitor the file. So it's the same type of deal, right? So even long ago, we had our Gmail accounts, our Yahoo accounts, our non-secure private emails that are just public and open to the public. And these people are now doing what they were doing before. They're hacking the emails, but what they're doing that's a little more savvy is they're kind of monitoring the file, and they only come in at the very last minute where it's time to send wire instructions and make sure all the files are excuse me, are getting to the point of closing where funds are going to be distributed. And then they kind of at the last minute slip in whatever kind of nuanced instructions they have, and they're coming from the correct email address. And so it's another little but we're all well trained, right? And we all know that wire instructions are wire instructions. They're only supposed to go to the one spot they're supposed to go to. But still, it slips through the cracks when escrow officers and title officers are dealing with thousands and thousands of emails per day. This kind of stuff still happens, and they're getting super savvy, and they've figured out ways to get it done. And wire instructions we thought were a thing of the past back in what you said was 16 and 17, but no, it's still existing, it's still occurring. And in this kind of climate where a lot of stuff is getting done digitally and over the internet and all that kind of stuff, fraud via wire is alive, very much alive and well, and it's apparent, and it's affecting us, and it's affecting clients, and money's getting sent ways that it are to places that it shouldn't be sent to. So it's one of those things. The easiest way to combat that is to get on private email, and through your brokerage have a private email address to protect you from that. Because I personally have used Gmail for a long time, and I am now via my company directed to only use my first American email address. And so I highly suggest everyone do the same, because it's not a problem that's going to go away, and they're getting more sophisticated, and they're getting more savvy in terms of how they're going about it, and they're doing it, and they're striking at very opportune times where they think that they can get away with it easiest. And so it's not just spray and pray, it's very highly focused, and it's very highly kind of effective, to be honest. It's kind of scary.
well, and also too, in your business practice,
Mhm.
as an agent, why do you need your buyer's wiring instructions?
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't. And it's not necessarily they're hacking it's a combination of everything. They've gotten savvy to where they've gotten the agent, right? And the agent is communicating with the buyer, right? Or not necessarily the listing agent, but the buyer agent, right? And so they've been in communication with these people to where they can kind of, and the buyers aren't coming from a private email server, most likely. They're definitely coming from Gmail. They're definitely coming from another Yahoo or whatever it is. And so yeah, it's the realtors are the gateway to the buyers, and the buyers have all that information that want to be accessed.
Well, and it's interesting because I don't think I shared my wire fraud story on the Nerdy Real Estate Resources group here. But what Noah said is exactly what happened to me years ago. And it was before it was really widespread talked about. We didn't have the wire fraud advisory. It was relatively a new thing. A lot of the larger brokerages were having it happen, but it hadn't filtered down to the realtors on the street quite yet. It was that new. And I was using an unsecured email, and obviously I hit something where they got full access into my records, and they did exactly what you said. They monitored the transaction until it was getting ready to close. And I had one communication with my client that morning, but let me preface this. I told my client I would never send them wiring instructions. Never. I would never send them wiring instructions. If you get them, they are not from me. Do not wire money. So I told them that up front. So they were emailing a little bit. I go into meetings. I am in meetings all day long. This is like prime, association business time, and I'm not answering anything. They take over my email account and start conversing with my client because they watched how I, communicated with them. Very friendly little communications, making a
They
couple.
pick up on patterns. They pick up on.
Yeah, they knew the patterns. And then at the last minute, they send oh, wait, there's been a change. Let me send this to you. And, I'll send you the wiring instructions. And then the email with the wiring instructions, you can tell that was like from Russia or wherever. And, there's misspellings and everything. But my client's thinking, well, I've been talking to Lisa all day, so it must be okay. And he goes and he wires $98,000 to the bogus wiring instructions. Thank God he did it late in the afternoon. So the wire cutoff times had already taken place. And as soon as he gets home, he's like, oh crap, I just did what Lisa told me not to do. And he calls me up and he's like, oh, and he tells me the whole story. And I'm like, oh my God, number one, we got to stop the wire. And, I said, just get on the phone. It was a credit union on the East Coast, and it was a government credit union of all things. And I said, you should have a fraud number. Just get somebody on the phone and tell them they have to stop this wire. So we were able to stop the wire. But he sent me the thread of emails, and it's like, oh my God, they came from my email account. And, everybody's like, oh, that wouldn't have happened. It's like, no, that's my email account. So, it happens. It happens to the best of us.
It does happen, and it's been happening since that time. And they've only gotten more sophisticated, and their timing's gotten better, and their wire instructions have gotten better. And it's, we thought it was a thing of the past, and it's definitely not. And there's other, forms of fraud going on too. We're seeing a lot of impersonations, and so
no,
in this world of digital stuff, a lot of people are using. Did I cut out?
You're a little unstable, Noah.
A little unstable. Well, that's about
your
par for the course. How about now?
You're fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
back it up. You froze when you were talking about impersonation.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of impersonations now, which, I mean, in this digital world, the notaries aren't necessarily as. It's easy to have a fake ID, and it's easy to go through forms of identification that you can get away with. You're masked up, you're doing all sorts of stuff. And we're seeing a lot of impersonations in terms of either, it's an investment property, and it's a family member that sells the home out from under another family member. We've seen that, like, to where they know that it's a free and clear home that they don't owe anything on. They don't have to do any sort of bank authorization to pay off the loan. They don't have to do anything. And it's just, they basically impersonate a family member. So, a brother and sister, the brother has this home, the sister sells the home out from underneath. Actually, I guess it would be sister to sister, because they would know if, brother and sister, but a sister to sister, that's happened, to where there was a sister that owned a free and clear property as an investment property. The other sister knew it was vacant. They knew that nobody was going to come to it. They knew that there was nothing to pay off. She got an ID with her name, with her sister's name, and everything looked completely fine. No one would ever know, right? And then all of a sudden, the sister is getting some closing information that she didn't ask for or order from. The money had already been wired to the other sister's account. The whole thing's been closed out, and now we have a big fraud case. And that's just one example, but that kind of stuff, the identification fraud, has been pretty rampant during COVID, and there's just a lack of in-person interaction. So when we see homes that are free and clear with no loans, with no anything, we take that very, very seriously, because there's just less identification aspects to go with that. So we really want to make sure that who you are is who you are, who you say you are when you actually go to sell a home, because all you're really doing when you sell, signing wise and authenticating for, is the notary for the grantee. And so we don't necessarily see a lot of it when we work with realtors, and thank goodness, because the realtors are the gateway and they're the gatekeeper. But a lot of the FSBO stuff, a lot of the, stuff that's out there that's not done by realtors, there's a lot of kind of fraud and some characters out there doing some strange stuff.
That's pretty nutty.
Yeah.
Now, if something like that happens, do you have any recourse? If one of your relatives snakes your property out from under you?
Yeah. So when it comes to relatives, I'm sure there's ways to unwind the property and unwind the sale. But that's a court case, and that's a process. And another thing that I just thought, like, that just came to mind when it comes to recourse, some super sophisticated fraud is going on now, where it's wholesale purchasing from the courthouse. So these are foreclosed properties that are getting wholesaled at courthouse steps. And there was a banker that had been in banking for a very long time. And each check when you write a cashier's check, there's two forms of watermark identification. There's the Federal Reserve and there's the banking reserve. And this gentleman has somehow copied those checks and those watermarks so precisely that it passed a check cashing area. So he goes to wholesale places. He writes checks for 250 grand for, I'm going to buy this wholesale property cash, like everybody does at courthouse step transactions. Slips the check through. Check's perfect. Looks great. He buys the property. In some cases, he has assignments to sell that property directly after. So he gets the money from a buyer because he's already locked and loaded. They go to get the funds. There's no funds. Account's empty. So yeah, it's just there's more fraud now than there's been in a very, very long time. Because people are getting creative. There's less identification purposes. There's less stuff happening to where fraud is increased. But in that case, like you're saying, that transaction has to unwind, and there's court
He should never have gone to his back.
processes and all sorts of stuff. And so, I'm unstable.
Yeah.
Yeah. The bank that's selling the property is locked up. The buyer that's getting assigned the property thinks that they got this sweet deal. It's not happening. And so it's a big mess. It's a big, big mess.
Wow. It's almost like they have more time on their hands, so they do get more creative.
Totally.
And I went to a workshop that Orange County Business Council had, where they had somebody that was former Homeland Security gentleman. One of the most fascinating things I ever heard was this guy's talk on how the whole fraud thing is this international problem. And, basically, we all kind of joke, well, it's Russia. Well, it is Russia, because this is how Russia makes money, because Russia doesn't have any money. They have natural resources, which right now are relatively cheap. So they're not getting any money off of their oil. And they don't have money for a big army to go and do their things. So they have two things. They have their nuclear stuff and they have wire fraud. They have fraud. They sit there and they identify the really good students in the IT classes at the colleges. And then, they have somebody come up to them that's, kind of like a Russian mafia kind of people, and say, hey, you know what? You can make a lot of money for us. And so they come and they work for them and they learn how to rip people off. And then the Russian government's watching to see who are the really good ones. And then they go and they meet them in a corner somewhere and say, we know what you've been doing. You've been, doing all this illegal stuff. You're going to come work for us, or else you're going into whatever the Russian jail thing is. And I mean, these people are good. These people are really super good. And yet they'll do the spoofs. So, I'm sure they probably were behind the DocuSign, spoofing that was going on, because that was a scary one, because your DocuSign stuff looked just like DocuSign. Why wouldn't I hit this? Boom, So
It's
Crazy.
happening all around the world too. And people have too much time on their hands. And we put all of our information out there. So it's easy for these people to find our cell phone numbers and text us, to send them some Amazon gift cards or Apple gift cards. And they've got our emails and our phone numbers. I mean, they have everything on us. We've made it so easy. And they just get more and more creative.
That's right.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard also was for like $13, you can buy a list of every email address with the word real estate in it, some sort of connotation of real estate from
Pass that
an
along.
email aggregator.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark web stuff that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah,
No.
there's
Yeah.
crazy stuff, but it's important to know what's going on out there so you can explain to your clients, hey, see this advisory? Let me tell you a little something about this, because I think we're too comfortable. Many of us are too comfortable with just saying, well, here's a form, here's a form, here's a form, without really discussing what is it that you look for when you're getting wiring instructions in, what, you shouldn't be receiving them, having those conversations beforehand, because that was the only thing that saved my client, was, oh crap, Lisa told me. And it took 2 weeks out of my life getting my every electronic that I had scrubbed to be sure that they weren't still lurking around in my equipment. Now, granted, this was a few years ago, but it's a hassle. It is a hassle. It is dangerous and it's scary and it's violating. It's and also too, just because you might be on secure doesn't mean that your clients are even remotely secure. So there's always going to be a chink in that armor somewhere, and you need to let your clients know about it.
What I found interesting that you shared, Noah, was the notarizing. So I refinanced my house in December and I didn't want to bring the notary into my home. So I met him in a public space. And now that I'm thinking back, yeah, he asked for my ID, but he didn't ask me to remove my mask.
Right.
And it very well could have been my sister dyeing her hair red and looking exactly like me.
Totally. And it's, there's safety precautions in place, and I understand that, but at the same time, it's real estate and all that stuff is a people business. And when you don't know the people behind the mask, it's hard to, like you said, it could have been anybody. It really could have been anybody signing. So
yeah,
it's
I can't sit in his backyard because
oh no, disaster. No, I'm saying unintended consequences of we want to be safe and we want to make sure everything is good, but stuff like that has happened and people just will take advantage of anything that they're allowed to take advantage of, and that's just the way it goes.
You said something else about the homes that are free and clear. I think that's a really important point. As agents, we should be paying extra attention to those properties too. Often we'll think, oh, great, this is going to be a smoother transaction because there's no loan, so no appraisal, slam dunk, right? Well, that should set our radar off that, hey, this is a little more vulnerable to fraud, so we better be paying attention and making sure that all of our partners are paying attention to the transaction too. Right.
And you're 100% right, because back forever I was just like, oh, free and clear property, this is good, this is great. But you're right, they're much more susceptible to fraud, and especially nowadays. So yeah, when you come across a free and clear property, it's definitely important to kind of put out the red flags to make sure everybody is who they say they are, and the sale is going in the direction that it's supposed to go, rather than
we're going to have to buy a better router or something.
subject to fraud. Oh no, disaster. Unbelievable. I apologize. I don't remember where I left off. Yeah. Okay.
We need to be more diligent.
Yeah, no, 100%. It just free and clear, just in general. But free and clear properties, absolutely, just because they are definitely subjected to more fraud when it comes to selling them.
What should an agent do when an escrow company sends them unsolicited wiring instructions for their clients?
Even when they have the disclaimer in their subject line, I'm sorry, their email signature, do not send wire instructions. Those
Yeah.
ones make me laugh.
Yeah, I would call them immediately. I would get on the phone. I don't need wire instructions. Wire instructions are not for me. Please send direct to the buyer. And there's no purpose for you to ever receive them. You don't need them. An agent never needs any sort of wire instructions whatsoever. It's a communication directly from escrow to the buyer. That's it. And if you ever get them back, call them back and make sure, because fraud might be taking place right then and there. So you make sure that they are the ones that sent you the escrow or the wire instructions first of all. Second of all, don't ever do that again. Send them directly to the buyer, and then you're good. But yeah, they get put at that when that comes across, you might be subjected to fraud. So pick up the phone.
Now, it's one company that does it still to this day. I think we had it happen just a couple of months ago, and it's just like,
No,
where have you guys been, and why are you doing this? Because we did call them the first time and said, "Don't you ever do this again?"
Yeah.
And the next one comes in and was just like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, well, people are going to do what they're going to do, but it's wild. Yeah, that shouldn't happen ever, because there's no need for a realtor to get escrow instructions, or wire instructions at all.
Now, do you know if it's true? I mean, I heard this, and I'm not sure if you've heard it too, that for any wiring instructions for a California transaction, the escrow bank account has to be in California. It always has to be a California bank or a California financial institution.
So I don't know that to be a fact,
But obviously he's
but I will put that on my to-do list to find out. Yeah, I was queuing. I was coming up with the answer to that one, and my answer is I'm not necessarily sure, but I will put that on my to-do list to find out, because that is an important distinction. Just because everyone's gonna bank a little differently in every state, and California is fairly secure. So yeah, I will check that out though. It's a good question.
I can't remember where I heard that from. I want to say it might have been from the Escrow Association. I could be
think so.
wrong.
Yeah, I think we did hear that through that group.
And that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, because I know when my client, many moons ago got hit, it was going to a Bank of America in Georgia.
Yeah,
And
sounds about right. Yeah, for a California
so I was
real estate
kinda
person.
like,
That's
and
correct.
Georgia, like in the United States, Georgia, not like your
Yeah.
Eastern
No.
European Georgia. And there was a note in here about, what did I have to go through for scrubbed? No, I actually I'm an Apple gal, and I had to take all of my stuff. They walked me through wiping everything off my iMac at home. I went in with my laptop, which is where we think everything happened. It was probably one of the most stressful evenings of my life, because I didn't know what to expect, and they're like, okay, so we have to throw them off the trail. And I'm like, okay. And they made me come up with 7 different passwords in a row for my Apple account, to just kind of make it where nobody was ever going to find out what my new password was.
Including you.
How hard it is to come up with
Including you, because by the time you're done with that, which one is the correct one?
Oh my God. And the one I
there's
came
so
up with was like this pure frustration. Anybody who knows me kind of can have an idea about how bad I could get.
Oh, we need to compare notes, because I have a story on that, but it's not for public. It's not for the public to hear.
Mine was really bad. I was just so mad at that point.
Yeah.
And
I don't blame you.
And then Lord help the poor kid who was working the counter when I brought my iPad in, because, it was like, okay, oh my God, I forgot my iPad. So I go to the Apple store, and they're like, okay, well, we need to be sure that this is your iPad. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. Nobody asked me anything about my phone, my laptop, or anything else. And I'm like, I can't prove it's why would I come in with this really old nasty iPad and ask you to wipe it, and no, we have to prove it's yours. And I'm like, well, how? And he's like, well, a receipt. And I'm like, it's 5 years old. I don't have a receipt. And he's like, well, where did you get it? And this part, I'm sorry for anybody who has family members working at Walmart. I said, I got it at Walmart. He goes, well, go to their customer service and ask them for a receipt. And I'm like, you've seen the people who work there. They're not gonna, I mean, and I literally burst into tears in the middle of the Apple store at Irvine Spectrum. And the guy didn't know what to do because this middle-aged woman holding an ancient iPad is crying and screaming. And he says, okay, okay, okay. And he goes in the back. Here you go. Here's your iPad. It's all taken care of. So if Apple gives you a hard time, just start crying.
There you go.
That's my advice.
There you go.
Oh my. All right, people, I gotta run. It's been fun.
Everybody,
Here's a happy
everybody
Noah.
watch. Well,
Lori, thanks for having me.
Lori's.
It's great to see you. Thanks for having me. And
Really good to see you.
I look forward to watching you with Dan Smith in a couple minutes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So if everybody hasn't registered, get on there and register, and let's hear Lori's life story.
Oh no.
But Noah and I'll hang out a little bit more. So we'll
Hi everyone.
see you later, Lori. Okay, let's see. So
I have one more thing of wire fraud stuff.
tell me your story.
Well, I mean, it's not really a story, just
Tell
something
me
else
your wire
happened.
fraud stuff.
Yeah. Right now there's a lot of elder abuse too, where
Are you making a comment about me saying that I was middle-aged?
I'm not saying anything. That's for you. That's for you. No, but
Oh, I made him freeze. Uh-oh.
what we're seeing is a lot of, am I back?
You're back.
I'm
Mhm.
back. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of
We're never going to get this story out of Noah because he keeps
people that
freezing
are elderly that are I'm back. Listen,
back.
I'm in and
Okay,
out.
so all of these old
Yeah.
people, what's happened to the old folks like me?
These poor guys, their broadband connection is falling apart, just like mine. No, they're getting taken advantage of by either their caretaker or opportunistic children, and basically they're having what's going on is they're basically coming in terms of, hey,
Gosh,
get
guys,
you
I'm
some
sorry that
actual
Noah
care.
keeps freezing.
Oh no, am I back again? I'm sorry.
Do you have your phone with you?
Yeah, I do.
Is it on Wi-Fi?
No, it's
Oh,
not.
just checking, trying to help.
I
Some-
appreciate that.
Mike White here, so you must have Cox.
I nailed it. Nailed it. Sorry. I think I'm back. I feel good. I feel good about this one.
Okay. So
Good.
let's try this one more time. So we got these old people.
Yeah.
We got these caretakers.
Yeah.
And what are these caretakers doing to the old people besides taking care of them?
Giving them care. Sometimes it's with caretakers and it's with children, and the children of the old people and the caretakers of the old people somehow convince them to deed off their house in order to provide them some extra cash in order to take care of them. But when they deed off them to the house, it's not necessary. It's the caretaker taking advantage of the situation by all of a sudden becoming a joint tenant on title. And yes. So it's stuff that we've been seeing. I froze again.
Just keep going like you didn't freeze.
Yeah. It's stuff it's stuff that we keep seeing. And it's with COVID and with people scared and with people worried about their health, they are doing stuff that they wouldn't necessarily do in order to kind of keep themselves safe in their opinion. But it's coming at a cost because somehow they're getting convinced to deed themselves off of title or deed someone else on the title with them. And it's, from the naked eye, it's an uninsured trust deed, right? So it's not through a transaction, it's just from
Just
one person to another. Yeah.
Party.
And so when that goes through a sale process, a good title company will see that there was an uninsured transfer deed, and we will make sure that the person that signed off their interest or signed interest to an additional rent to do that, and it wasn't something that was forced upon them. But when a notary is just going to notarize that deed, they don't know any of that, and so that deed gets recorded and it's of record, and sometimes the title company doesn't catch that, and they just see who the property is vested through, and all of a sudden caretaker Jane has the authority to sell the property, and so it's a pretty scary situation. And so we've seen that where caretakers have sold properties that definitely necessarily weren't belonging to them, and it's scary stuff. It really is.
Well, we actually had a transaction like that this past year. There was a whole lot of
We did.
different deeds, a family trust, a multi-generational passing through, like nobody just set up a new trust, which I think would have been the thing to do. But they just kept, add, subtract, put this person on, you have a 1/10 interest in this property, and then we have to go find this person and have them sign off and prove that they did because it was uninsurable. And then we were having a new successor trustee.
Honestly, it was one of my favorite transactions I've ever done. Let me tell you.
Yeah, that was I learned a lot.
Yeah. And it just goes to show you that it's okay. It can be explained away. It's just we have to make sure that who is selling the property is really selling the property, and they have the authority to sell the property with the blessing of everybody else that was quote unquote on title. So everything is explainable. Everything is fine. It's just we have to make sure that when there's all sorts of clouds on title and multiple people saying they have X amount of interest, that whoever has that actual interest is the one acting on behalf. So it's title problems are fun because we get to figure them out, but it's one of those things that we have to make sure the correct people are the correct people.
Yeah, and it can be interesting. I mean, that was a really interesting detective game we had going.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a good.
We can call it that. Okay. We do have a question. Doug Ward asks, what does the title insurance cover and not cover when it comes to fraud?
So when it comes to fraud, it depends on the type of fraud, right? Our title insurance policy is going to cover the seller in terms of what, it's a pretty loaded question because there's a lot of ways to answer that. So, I can give a couple different answers, but they might not necessarily apply to X case because each individual case is going to be different. But we will ensure that we do everything we can to make sure the correct parties are signing. There is no fraud, but if there is fraud, it's a case by case basis. We have a claims department that is very effective at playing claims, and we will always do right by our clients, who are you guys as realtors, and we will always do right by their clients, who are the buyers or the sellers. So if there is some crazy stuff where escrow didn't catch something and we didn't catch something and there's clearly fraud there, we will take care of it. It is insured. So it's hard to say without a specific case to react to.
Exactly. One thing I do have to put this out here, something that Sherry Barami put in. She said, I recently got a phone call from myself. Freaked me out and thought my phone was hacked. Thank God we nipped it in the bud. But I mean,
that's scary. That's definitely
and there's
scary.
a lot of people, that's something, it has absolutely nothing to do with title fraud, but it's something I'd love to try to find out more about is how do people get people's phone numbers so they can use those to make calls and stay masked behind those.
Yeah, wild stuff.
Crazy stuff going on out
there. Hi,
Sherry. Sherry says she loved you too. I love Sherry. Okay, well, we're going to bring this to an end because Lori needs the love and the other things. So if you haven't registered for her interview, please do. And so we can show her she's, got that love and support out there, because it's definitely an interesting time. You don't know who's interacting when you're on a webinar. And
I'm flying blind, and it's very interesting. It's very,
and it's kind of like this, it's great. We still got, like 32 people on here. And it's a great way for us to all kind of interact, have a little sense of community, and be able to, learn something that we can use that, I don't even think we had the opportunity to exchange information like this before. There's certain things about the pandemic world I kind of like.
Don't say that out loud too much.
Okay. Well, thank you, Noah, for being here. We're so happy that you could join us, and hopefully you'll come join us every Monday and give us a little title insight when you have something new to share with the group.
Whenever you want me, I'll be there.
Okay, every Monday.
Happy to be here, and it was wonderful to see you guys. And to the folks watching at home, great to see you too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us. Well, and yeah, it was really good info today, and just a little reminder. And we're so happy that you spent some time with us, and come see us next Monday. And I think we're going to be having another guest joining us shortly. But I'll put more information out there about that when we have it. So you guys have a wonderful day. Go out and sell a house. Take care. Bye.